Study this morning for Sunday school. I see some young visitors over here. Welcome to class. Good to have you guys here. And then all of you that are here regularly. You know, it's interesting. We always welcome the new people to church and make a big deal about welcoming new people. Which, by the way, this is my friend Andrew. I'll introduce him more later. But I am welcoming him. I'm glad he's here. But sometimes I think we need to also make a big deal of welcoming the people who are here Sunday in and Sunday out. You know, I really appreciate you guys and your faithfulness in coming on a regular basis and being a part of our church family. And so I just want to welcome you guys especially today. Thank you guys for being here. All right, so let's start off with a word of prayer. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the chance to get together and worship you as the family of God. I thank you for this chance to have Sunday school and hopefully to learn something that will help us to become more of the people that you want us to be. And we also thank you for the good snacks that we had to eat. We pray in Christ's name, amen. All right, so today we are talking about evangelism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And no, that I'm not saying the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm saying there are different kinds of evangelism, and a lot of different kinds actually. And some of them are more effective than others, and some of them actually might do more harm than good. All right, that would be the bad and the ugly. There's the ones that do more harm than good. And evangelism is something that I think all Christians know that we're supposed to evangelize, right? I mean, Jesus, that's what he said when he was leaving. He was like, I want you to go out into the whole world and teach people what I've taught you, and baptize people and make Christians, right? And make disciples. So we all know we're supposed to do it, but a lot of people don't really do it a whole lot, either out of fear or ignorance. Either they're afraid of something. Usually it's afraid of what the other person's going to think about you when you talk to them about Jesus, afraid of how they might react to you. Or you're afraid maybe that you might mess it up and you might tell them the wrong thing and you might make them worse off than they were to begin with, right? And so there's fear there for a lot of people. And then there's also just ignorance, just I don't know what to say. Nobody's taught me how to evangelize, so I don't know what I'm doing, and I wouldn't know how to start that conversation. I wouldn't know if they asked a question, what if I don't know the answer to the question that they asked, right? So those two things, fear and ignorance, keep a lot of Christians from doing evangelism. And so this week and next week, I'm going to be teaching for 2 weeks here, and hopefully we will help to deal with some of those things. Hopefully we will learn how to avoid doing evangelism that causes more harm than good. And hopefully we will learn how to, why we do not need to be afraid. And then hopefully teach you some good ways of doing evangelism so that you'll have those tools in your pocket for the next time that God provides an opportunity for that. Okay? So that's kind of a little overview of the next couple of weeks. And so as far as introductions go, you guys all know me, so we're going to skip me and we're going to talk about something more interesting. This is my friend Andrew, all right? And Andrew, thanks.
Hello all.
And Andrew and I have known each other for many years. We are both board gamers. So actually, I will pull this back up just for a second on myself. You'll notice down at the bottom here, I have board gamer, because that is my favorite hobby, is to play board games. And that is how we met each other. And at a place called Board Game Nights, and which doesn't exist anymore, it went out of business. But it was a fun place to get together and play board games. And so we met there, and he's been a good friend ever since then. He and his wife, Laura, are both great. They live down in Fayetteville, and so he made a decent drive to come up here.
40-minute drive up here, but it's Blair.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. He's my friend. Some things about him, he does some charity work, supports the Rainbow Coalition, he's a also board gamer some, and a role-playing gamer. Ooh, we're getting some beeping. Anybody got beeping? I don't know how to, it might be in the kitchen, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, role-playing gamer. He, in his professional life, has been a scientific lab researcher, which is also something that we have in common, because in my past, I also was a scientific lab researcher. And then, as far as religious background, when he was a kid, he grew up in the church and grew up with Christianity. However, he has gone away from that. You know, we sang the song this morning in church, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love, right? And unfortunately, that's what happened in Andrew's life. He felt prone to wander and leave, and he did.
Yep.
He took off.
And to be clear, I, was very avid in the church. I have gone on 4 different mission trips. I went to church every Sunday. I would have been in this class, drinking that coffee if I had lived here in Arkansas. I lived in Florida. But so to point that out, like, yes, I have a very deep religious background, but not one that I currently practice in any way.
Yep. So currently, he would identify as agnostic, not really believing in any religions. However, one of the reasons why he has been willing to be here today is he is not anti-religion. Like, some people are like very anti-Christianity. You know, it's not just that I don't believe, it's that I don't want anybody else to believe, and I'm gonna like yell at people for being Christians or whatever. He's not like that. And so, but even that being the case that he is not anti-Christian, what he is doing is still very brave. I mean, coming to a Christian church as not a Christian and being up there, and he's going to be sharing some feedback with us today, because when we talk about evangelism in the church, we always give the Christian side of things. We don't, as far as I know, I've never been in a place where I have gotten to hear the non-Christian side of things. Like, how do they feel when we approach them and do these different things, right? And so he's just going to be sharing what is his perspective on, I'm going to be doing some evangelism stuff, and then he's going to be sharing his perspective on that. And so I don't know what he's going to say, he doesn't know what I'm going to say, so who knows how this is going to go. But
I'm opinionated as a person and loud and Italian, so we'll find out.
Yeah, there you go. But I think this is a rare opportunity, and I just want to thank you for your bravery to come into this place and to share your thoughts with us. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Mark, and honestly, you are that person that would allow that. Like, I would not say yes to any other person on the planet to do this, but you are that individual who's kind and well enough that this seems like this will be an easy, comfortable thing to do, and not something that is a trap or a gotcha or a problem that so many fear when it's like, oh, we're gonna walk into a church. And I can say, we play board games a lot, and one of the biggest problems is you gotta have a large space, and you think to yourself, oh, well, there are churches, and I'm at a church, why don't I bring my board game friends to come to the church, and we'll just play after hours in this table here, and we'll talk, and it'll be good time. No one does that. And the reason no one does that is because, like, no, I don't want to step foot in that church because I am not a religious individual. And that's something that's like, okay, being open, we have that issue. So it's nice to have, be able to bridge those gaps, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. So, let's see here. We will skip this stuff because we've been through that before. Well, I mean, actually, I don't know. Maybe you want to see this. So this is how I read the Bible. I always preface my teaching with that because obviously different people interpret the Bible different ways, and that's going to affect how they teach it. And so this is how I understand the Bible. That God is the source. He's responsible for it. Writers, commentators, and translators were all inspired. God doesn't contradict himself, so he's not going to say something contradictory to what's in the Bible. So if you're like, hey, God told me this, and the Bible says something different, then you're wrong. And we must match our lives to the Bible, not twist the Bible to fit our lives. And it's best understood in the context of itself. If you don't understand something, read more of it, and it'll make sense. It's 100% accurate unless proved inaccurate by itself. Nothing outside the Bible can prove the Bible wrong. Just there are like a
Because they change it,
handful
Old
of
Testament
things.
versus New Testament. Sure.
Literal unless proven figurative by itself. So if you're reading it, what it seems to say, that's just what it means, unless some other passage says not. Anyway, anything in the Old Testament still applies unless it's changed in the New Testament. It's simple unless proven complicated by itself, and outside knowledge can add icing to the cake, but it doesn't change the cake. So that's how I understand the Bible. Okay, so this is the Great Commission that we kind of mentioned at the beginning. This is Jesus' command for all of us as Christians to go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to follow all that I commanded you. All right, so we're supposed to do it, and do we? Some people, this is an objection that sometimes I will hear people say. Some people will be like, well, I don't go out and tell people about Jesus, but I just live Jesus. And so that's enough, you know? They would say the actions speak louder than words. And so there's a famous quote, raise your hand if you've heard this. Preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. Who's heard that? All right, a few people have heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. It's said a lot. And the idea of it is you don't need to use words to share the gospel with people. But the problem with that, and I mean, there is some truth to that. Like how you live your life does say something. So Andrew, for instance, mentioned that he's willing to come today because he knows me, and he said I was a good person, and that I'm not the kind of person that's like a gotcha person or whatever. So so how I live my life has apparently, impacted him in some way. So that there is some truth to this, like a lot of things. There is some truth to it. But there's also a big thing that's missing here, and that is that being a nice person who isn't a gotcha person or whatever is not exclusive to Christianity. I mean, Andrew is also a nice person. He's also not a gotcha person, unless we're playing board games, and then he's totally gonna be gotcha.
Mark loses every time.
Yeah. But the point is that he's also a great guy, and he's not a Christian, right? You can not be a Christian and still be really nice and really friendly, and you can be nice, great to your kids, and you can be good at your job and whatever. You can do those things and not be a Christian. Yes, Sue. Let's hear it. Hold on a second. Hey, Jonathan, can you help out? If people have questions, we'll take that. Jonathan will be our mic guy for this morning. Thank you.
I would just make it short of this, but we heard a testimony about a young attorney from Atlanta who grew up in a totally atheistic home. And she said, the attorney said, my mother lived a very Christian life, even though she was not at all a believer in God.
Right.
And that changed later in both their lives.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Yeah, that's a great example. So yeah, there's a lot of people who live great-looking lives and are not Christian. So if you live a great-looking life, I mean that's good. You should do that. You should live a good life, but that doesn't necessarily preach Christ. That doesn't necessarily do that. And in fact, there's a Bible verse that says, how then are they to call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in whom they have not heard? And how are they to hear without a preacher? So it's not enough to just live the Christian life. We also need to actually tell people about Jesus. We need to actually use words. Okay. So what is the essential gospel? Because obviously the Bible is a really big book. And there's no way, when you're evangelizing, you're not going to be like, hey, let me read you a story. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
And 10 weeks later, when you finish reading, that's never going to work. So we can't go through the whole Bible. And so part of evangelism is boiling it down to what are the essential things that someone who is not a Christian needs to know to be a Christian. And I would say really there's three things. So they are these. Why do you need to be saved? Right? Because if you don't have a reason to be saved, then they're not going to do it. Number two, how can Jesus save you? All right? Because if you're like, well, okay, I agree, I need to be saved, but if there's no way to do it, then why are we talking? Right? So you got to have a how there. And then, what does it mean to be a Christian? So if I believe you, if I buy into this whole thing, and I want to become a Christian, what does that mean? What am I getting into? You know, it's kind of like, what's the fine print here? You know, like you would, if somebody came to your house and they were like, hey, I want you to sign up for, I've been talking to your neighbors here on the street. You ever notice that everybody who comes to your door has been talking to the neighbors on your street? Like, I've had a lot of people come up to my door recently that have been talking to the neighbors on my street. And I'm helping all of them out, and now I can help you out for a great deal, because since I'm here anyway, it'll be cheaper. This is standard sales thing. Anyway, so they're like, hey, so you pay me this money, and then I'm gonna, and they don't tell you what they're gonna do. Are you gonna give them money? No, of course not, right? You wanna know what you're getting into before you agree to do a thing. So what does it mean to be a Christian? All right, so these are the three things. All right, now, one of the most popular ways of trying to communicate those things in the past has been handing out tracts. So at each of your tables there's a bunch of different tracts. And so this is where Andrew's gonna come in here. I've given him a copy of each of these different things.
There are like 11 or 12 of them there.
Yeah, there's 10. I think we
10,
got,
okay.
or well, oh no, I guess
Yeah.
maybe 11 with this one. Anyway, but yeah, so there's a bunch of different tracks there, and so we'll be talking about them, each one briefly, and he's, to help him out, I did send him the tracks ahead of time, so he could read through those and have some thoughts on those. I got notes. So, first off, for the first thing, let's say that, you know, we're out and about, you know, we're at Bentonville Square or somewhere, you know, and we're just walking down the street, and here, we'll go with this one here. And so I'm just going past them, I'm like, hi, here you go, have this, it's free, thanks, see you later.
Neat.
Okay. All right, so regardless of what the tract is, how would you feel?
Exactly how I did it. About 99% of the time, you're probably just going to find the nearest trash can or litter if you don't feel so inclined. That's the reality. But for those who do look, there is a potential for people who look. It really is going to be based on what am I seeing initially, and I'm kind of though bewildered regardless. The idea of just handing these out, it can be very difficult, because yeah, you are gonna probably end up, okay, whatever. This is another piece of pamphlet. I've got plenty of these, whether it be from Christianity or from the vote 2 on Amendment 4, you know, vote yes here or whatever. They pop up all the time. Most people don't have time to, don't pay a second glance, and if you're not giving me a second glance, then why should I bother?
Okay, all right, so the tracts might be tempting to be a thing to give out because it's easy for us, right? Because if you're afraid to talk to strangers, you just hand it to them, well, you don't have to talk to strangers. But the bad part is that they're probably not gonna read it, they're probably just gonna throw it away. All right, but let's talk about, even if they did read it, all right, the small percentage of them that do read it, so you've looked at that one?
Yep.
What were a couple of your thoughts on that one?
So, Are You Ready is pretty good, and to be clear, I took a look through, the way I gave my ranking, I ranked them 1 out of 10. One of these got a 9, a couple got 1s, but the way I think about it is, if it's 5 or lower, it may, or less than 5, it actually is probably detrimental to your cause. It's better at turning someone atheist than it is turning someone Christian, in my estimation. 5 to 7, yeah, you can hand these out, but you really need to give your own support, and there are a couple that have their own value ahead of that. So this is like a 5 or a 6, because it is really nice. First initial point, a good cover, hey, it's something to look at, eye-catching, right? And it comes in with some basic dialogue, but it is a little long, right? If you're taking a look at these, this is a whole page and a back page. And that's sort of how you are looking at this, and you're thinking, oh, I gotta read this, I'm seeing a bunch of, you know, Bible quotes, oh, this is a Christian thing, you know, okay, how is it? But if it has a decent hook, that's what's gonna draw me in more likely.
Okay, so positive in that it has an eye-catching cover, negative in that there's just a lot of text and a lot of Bible verses, and so apparently that is a turnoff, okay? And by the way, the tracts that I gave him, these are actually some of the better tracks. There's a lot worse tracks out there that have like cartoons of, I don't know, Satan like stabbing people with pitchforks and stuff like that. Which would be definitely less than 5
Yeah.
on your list. So I didn't even go with those. These are like some of the better tracks. All right. So that was are you ready? All right. How about
So where did you grade this?
Oh, I gave Are You Ready a 6 out of 10, which is actually a pretty high score. I'm very critical as a person.
all right? So 6 out of 10 on that one. All right. And then we have this one called 7 Things. All right. 7 Things. What's your thoughts on that?
So, gave this one a 5 out of 10, and here's why. You open it up, I don't think we had extra copies of this one. We open it up, and it looks clever, right? Look at it, it's got all these different things, 7 things you need to know, but it's actually really hard to read. Now, because when you start looking, you gotta kind of look, and if I'm at like set 5, I'm looking down here, and ultimately what it is a list of a bunch of different Bible verses. Now, I know, especially as Christians, the belief that the Bible can speak for itself is very, very powerful, but as someone who is evangelizing, it's your added experience that can be very beneficial to that. So, while the quotes can be useful, this is quote bombardment. This is, in each little one of these 7 things, there's anywhere from 2 to 4 quotes. So 21 different Bible verses about these 7 topics. That can be, okay, these are just a bunch of words at me and not the story that's behind those words.
Okay. So a 5 on that one.
Yep.
All right. Next we have How to Be Saved.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that one?
So this one, again, it looks okay to present. It's a nice, like, okay, I get the reference. It starts with a paragraph, and let's be clear, you get about 200 words. Any more than 200 words, people stop reading. That's just kind of how things go. The first paragraph is about, like, imagine yourself drowning, and imagine what a lifeguard would be, and imagine about, like, I get the metaphor, right? Right, and so you can even start, it doesn't have to be that long. By the way, these things are useful, as a church, you can make them. They're not hard to make, and they're easy to set up. This could easily have been rewritten and chopped down to be, hey, do you feel that you're drowning, that life is too much? Well, God is the best lifesaver in the world. Here's some quotes about him, here's what we believe at our church. Boom, that would be an excellent thing, but instead you have that rambliness about it. So how to be saved, I believe I gave a 5 out of 10. It doesn't do any harm, but I think it's just gonna end up in the trash. That's okay.
Okay. Why did Jesus die?
So this is one about the 10 that we looked at, that actually this is clearly Christian, right? Now, like, are you ready? That sounds like, okay, that's probably Christianity, right? This is an Easter Sunday picture, right? This tells me exactly what it is, and so I gave props to that, because I know what we're dealing with, right? And it's a nice image, it's evocative, it opens up, and you have lots of bold color. Maybe it's a little affronting with the red, but I get it, the blood of Christ is red, and etc. So you actually have this look of, okay, wow, there's a lot of bold words in here. You know, oh, why did we die? Oh, by one man, Adam, sin entered into the world of death. Because I'm maybe not reading all the words, but I'm going to read the bold stuff. That's how we read stuff, right? That's the important parts. And so this actually, I gave a 7 out of 10 as well. Maybe even bordering 8 out of 10, depends on if I'm feeling nice or not. It actually has stuff. Now, downside, yeah, we're already bleeding back into the back of the cover to have to give more information. Christ is a simple message, right? It doesn't need to be overwhelming.
Okay. But still, new record, 7 or 8, 7 and a half?
7 plus.
7 plus, okay,
Yes.
so the best one so far on that one, all right? Next we have, what do you believe, with a bunch of signposts?
Yeah, so this is one of my least favorite ones. This one I give a 2 out of 10. 2. First, this is an aside point, but it is worth mentioning, I did find funny. You'll look at some of these signs, there's one here that says Taoism, and there's another sign behind that says DA, and it looks like an O, which is Taoism, which is the same thing as Taoism. It's just because in Chinese you don't have a language for the letter Tao, which is T/D, so it's literally doesn't even know these other religions that's referencing, right? But worse than that, it opens. According to some estimates, there are more than 4,000 religions and belief systems in the world today. Are they all equally valid, or is one superior to all the rest? Many religions are contradictory to one another and therefore point their followers in opposite directions. Because of these differences, it's impossible for every system of belief to be true. So I guess it's an argument against universalism, right? And then it goes, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. And then it gives 15 Bible verses, something like that. So here's the fun part. Here's why I gave this 1 and 2. One of the strongest arguments against Christianity comes from the most well-known modern atheist. We might all have heard his name before, Richard Dawkins. You've heard that guy's name before?
Oh, yeah.
One of his, he wrote The God Delusion. He wrote, he called Christianity a mind virus, etc. I'm not a fan of his, let's be clear. But he did say one very smart thing. He said, I'm paraphrasing here, he said, Mark, you're just as much of an atheist as me. I reject 4,000 religions. You reject 3,999. That's what he said. That's the point of this thing. It's saying there are 4,000 of them, but here's the thing. It doesn't go into any way to defeat that argument. It just says, hey, there are 4,000 religions. Here's a bunch of Bible quotes. That's not helpful. There are 4,000 religions, but here's why mine matters more. This is why ours is better. And you could even see this being written as something if you were proselytizing to people of other religions, which is not something normal to do in the sense that in America, only 10% of the population is non-Christian, is religious but non-Christian, Judaism, Muslim, Buddhist, etc. 60% identify as Christian, though we know that number is a lot lower than 60%.
Sure.
30% identify as agnostic or atheist. The reality is, trying to convert other religions over, at least here in America, and especially in Arkansas, that's probably not your target audience. Your target audience is going to be someone actually probably like me, who has, yeah, I've heard of church, I've gone to church, a bit, at least gone to church a bit, but I don't believe. Okay, well, here's why you should believe. So instead of fighting about, well, there's a bunch of different choices, and then it's being like, here's some cool Bible verses, if you are going to go this route, be like, hey, the Quran says this, but we believe this, and the Torah believes in this, and this is why, like you could go that route and give arguments for preaching to other religions. But ultimately, I really do think if you're going to be evangelizing, especially here in Arkansas, look, I literally counted. When I got off the highway, it was a 6-minute drive. I passed 8 churches in that 6 minutes.
Praise the Lord.
Sure, but yet church attendance is as low as it could ever be, right?
Although church attendance here is rising.
That's
So a
good.
thing.
Good job. And maybe you're doing something. That's good. Good to hear.
All right, next we have Somebody Loves You.
So this one I didn't give a really high score either, but for one particular reason. This is really useful in 1 month,
Valentine's Day.
right? This is great for Valentine's Day, which I know you're supposed to evangelize in all months of the year, but February is a terrible time to be out in the middle of giving out pamphlets, right? But it isn't bad as its own as it stands for. It has the same thing of that red. Okay, it's giving that that vibe of it's easy to get. It's approachable. It's got bold letters. It goes on this thing about like how everything is you have unending, unselfish, undeserved, unimaginable, undying, unmerited. I don't know how that relates to the Valentine's theme going on, but that's okay. I think I gave it a 4 out of 10. But honestly, it's not the worst. It's just maybe not practical for standard evangelism.
All right, and then we have one that has John 3:16 written on the front of it.
Yes, everyone loves that quote. And for God so loved the world, He gave His one and only Son. Whoever believes in Him shall not perish, but shall receive eternal life. Yes, I remember that memorized. But here's the reality: most atheists have also heard that before, right? John 3:16 is probably the most popular quote of Christianity. And so, for better or worse, this gives a little bit of and also has this problem. Yay, remember that 200 word point? Yeah, that doesn't look like 200 words. It's even got the back there. That's 5 pages. This gives a vibe, and I don't know who this is for. Because that looks good for a child, right? That's very childish, it's cartoonish. But then it gives me 5 pages of text. I don't know who you're handing this to, which is a general problem with most of these tracts. And I realized this when I was about 8 or 9 in here. I kept writing like, who is this for? And then I realized who it's for. It's for y'all. That's who it's for, because that's who this product is for. These come from, whether it be free or from other churches, they come from these other groups who the intended, and the idea is you would either buy them, or if they're free, maybe you go look at their other products. You guys are the intended audience. Your pastor is the intended audience. The individual who is doing the evangelism, where's your evangelism team leader is, which if you don't have one, I don't know, maybe you should point one.
I have one.
Oh, good. Good.
He's great.
He's great.
He's
That's
great.
who the audience is for, which is why, in my estimation, most of these end up in a situation where it's appealing to you, but not necessarily to the person who needs saving, right? And that's really who we want the target audience to be. So be mindful of that, of thinking about, I like this, yeah, but if I handed this out to someone who was down on their luck and really needed a start over and really needed a pathway to happiness, would this be helpful? That's a different thought. So,
Yeah,
and so I think I gave it like a 3 out of 10.
3 out of 10, okay. And I'm concerned what number this one's gonna get. We have the $1 million bill here.
Yeah. Please throw these out. This is a 1, but only because my scale goes down to a 1. It could go lower. If it went lower, this would be at the bottom. I might want to call this one, and look, these are using your words, and if you don't agree with me, that's fine. This is the work of Satan, if we're using your words. This is bad. I'm sorry. This does more to I know this for a fact, because I've seen these before. I know someone who is a militant atheist because they received this. This is very good at taking people who are doubters and atheists and agnostics, people who don't know where to go, and running them straight away from God. So think about this. Think about the person who needs saving. They don't have God. They are down on their luck, right? They don't have a pathway forward. They don't have purpose. Their wife is leaving them if they have a wife. They're broke. They're unemployed. They've got debt, gambling debt. They maybe are addicted to drugs and alcohol. And they see where someone hands them a $100 bill. What does that do? That gives them hope. Oh, I can pay my electric bill. Maybe I could give my kid that Christmas present. Oh, it's fake. You set up a scenario where you are starting with false hope. Where you're starting with, and is that what Christianity is? It's false hope? I don't think it's false hope. I don't think any of y'all would believe that in this room, right? That's the start of this. Oh, look, it's not. It's fake. It's not real. And then it goes into another line of, it then rolls right out on the $1 million question. Will you go to heaven when you die? Have you lied, stolen, used God's name in vain, or lusted? If God sees you as a liar, a thief, a blasphemer, and adulterer at heart, yeah, that's a really good way to get someone to listen to you, is to start by telling them that they are eternally broken. And then it goes, of course, into, properly, like, hey, if you are broken, get baptized, right? And come to, go to needgod.com and livingwaters.com or what have you. But by that point, you've only just incensed people, you've made them angry. This, I will give you the little story on my friend who I know is now an atheist, very militant atheist on this. They were given this as a waitress, and not a tip, at all. Right.
I've actually heard of that happening before.
Yeah.
I don't know who you're talking about, but I've heard multiple people, when I've been doing evangelism out at Tanya Creek, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen like kids think, oh, hey, this is cool, But I have also had adults who said, oh yeah, I was a waitress and somebody stiffed me and didn't give me a tip and instead they left me this fake bill. And they were really mad.
Yeah,
I have heard of it.
And then from that point forward, they literally would look for individuals who had like crosses on their neck or clearly part of the Sunday crowd, and would think and would act like go through and look, be like, did they actually give me a tip? The table next to me that didn't have any religious iconography gave me like a 15-20% tip. And let's be clear, you still they do a good job regardless. But then they start thinking to themselves, oh wow, it seems like the Christians actually give me less money. Oh, okay, they're not the charitable group, and they're the ones who are literally going to stiff me. That happened to this individual in Florida that I knew, and it's like, well, that's not fair. That's a bias. But once that bias gets in your head, it worms there pretty destructive, right? And you start looking at these patterns, and that's not good. So yeah, please never hand these out. Again, yeah, you're right. To a kid, that's fun. But like to anyone who needs their life to be saved, that's not helpful at all.
Also, just as I guess as a fact check, because it is a common thought that Christians are not very generous, often because of tipping. However, if you actually look at the statistics, the most generous group of people in America are Christians.
Absolutely true.
The people, in fact, there's a direct relationship between how religious someone is and how generous that person is. And so, and that's not just giving to your own church, because there is that, because all of us, we give a lot of money to the church here. But even if you take that out and just look at giving to other things outside the church, the more religious you are, the more generous you are. But that doesn't apply to every single person, but as a whole, that's the fact.
And that is absolutely true. I can say someone who works with a lot of charities, Rainbow Coalition stuff, that's LGBT stuff, and I know there's obviously differences there, but even still, it is the Christian groups who give. We work with Seven Hills, which is a homeless shelter. We work with, there's a soup kitchen, and it is what our group, what my family does, is we often will coordinate with people and pick up products from them and drop them off at these appropriate communities, and it is often the Christian households who give. So I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, you guys are not generous or kind. No, that's not the case. But that's the perception, and that's a bad perception.
Sure, yeah, okay. So then going on, all right, now, I'm not gonna actually go on, we're gonna pause. And we're gonna do this a few times today,
Sure.
all right, normally I would have just gone on and did this, but I'm gonna use this as a teaching moment. You might have just picked up on that, he just mentioned that he works with the Rainbow Coalition. or
Well,
something
the
like
Rainbow
that. What's it
Coalition is
called?
just a term, it's just a better term than that LGBT. That's
Okay,
too many layers.
yes,
Rainbow Coalition.
LGBTQIA plus, yes.
Rainbow Coalition, way
Yeah.
easier, right?
Right?
We're gonna say it better? Yeah.
So he works with that, all right? And yet, I was just gonna go on and keep going with the lesson. I wasn't going to stop and be like, okay, hey, let's have a talk about why homosexuality is a sin, and the Bible, let me read you these
Yeah, sure.
verses and whatever, okay? All right, now, obviously, the Bible does speak about that, and I do believe that living a homosexual lifestyle, choosing to act on that is a sinful thing. And Andrew knows that, how I believe the Bible and so, that sort of thing. But this is not the time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about something totally different right now. And even on a regular, I know what he believes about that, he knows what I believe about that. Like,
Fine.
so when we're playing board games, that's not the time to talk about that either. In fact, it's almost never the time to talk about that. Andrew is not a Christian. So why would I expect him to have a Christian perspective on the Bible, on how to read that, or on what LGBTQ stuff is, right? Like, he doesn't have Jesus. So it would not be logical for me to expect him to see things the way that I do on those issues. And at the end of the day, he needs Jesus way more than he needs to agree with me about any particular issue, right? Whether it be that or anything else that we happen to disagree about. Like, until he has Jesus, then the rest of that stuff, it's really, like, I'm not saying it's not important. Everything has some level of importance. But Jesus is way more important than any one thing, And so we need to focus on that, and not get sidetracked into these other things. Because if you do, it just derails life, and you can't just share life together with people.
And I'll give a point to that that's actually very important. One of the groups we work with is a church that is affirming of LGBT, and that's fine. You guys have different opinions. It's not a big deal. But guess what? They have a soup kitchen, and that soup kitchen is helpful to people who are of those beliefs and who follow those paths. They need food too.
Sure.
And they need, when they're broke and they don't have, the way forward, they need help too. Just like every single person, whether they are heterosexual, homosexual, anywhere in between.
Everybody eats.
Everybody needs to eat, right? And so that's the idea. It's like, it doesn't matter what that belief is.
And
You know?
to be fair, because you don't know this about our church, but we
Yep.
also actually have a food pantry, and we give away food every week to
Yep.
whoever comes. And
Great
some
thing.
of them might be in that community, and we give them food anyway.
Yep.
We don't, like you said, everybody needs food.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay, so, anyway, that was a little teaching aside there. All right, so then, I said the, two left here, one is his favorite and one is my favorite, and so, we'll see what, we'll start with your favorite.
Start with
Why
my
was-
favorite.
Why was this
This
your
one is my
favorite?
favorite, and it actually is perfect that it came in counter to this one, because it does the same thing. It lies to you. It's a trick. But why is it different? Because think about if someone will hand this to you, you would look and you'd first look perplexed, right? This is a passport, right? You look perplexed, and unless you read the word passport to heaven, it's like, what is this going on? And maybe you even could have this in a nice, something that feels a little bit more passport-like, right? You don't have to, of course. Or imagine you found this laying next to the trash can, because let's face it, even this one's probably gonna end up near the trash. You found it, you go, oh, someone lost their passport. What do you do when you lose a passport? You grab it, you open it up. Oh, I got tricked. But I didn't lose hope. It's not about hope. This gives you hope. False hope, right? This is, oh, I could do something. It's just a passport. You're just being nice. Oh, someone lost their passport. Hey, did anyone? Oh. Dreaming of an international vacation without obtaining a passport, you cannot travel to many destinations. Anyone who wants to be in heaven has someday must also plan ahead. And then it gives a bunch of information about God and about preparing for heaven and paying the price and getting your passport to heaven. Yeah, sure, it's a little lengthy. That's why it doesn't get a 10 out of 10. But it also even goes in this really cool thing, all these little stamps on there. It's themed, right? It's themed like a passport, little fun stamps. And they have different Bible verses on there, which is a useful way of being like, hey, would you like to learn more? Check out, Philippians 3:20, right? That's helpful without bombarding the information. You even could go one step further with this. If you are a church, as a church, you can get a stamp. They're not that expensive of like your location or just the name, and you could stamp these and say, come to, Village Bible Church. Am I got it right? Yeah. Come to Village Bible Church this Sunday, right? And now it's a call to action because let's face it, a lot of these groups are all like, go to this website. People don't go to websites, right? They often don't. It's just how it works. Especially Christian restaurant websites, which are known as the ones that have the most viruses of any group. That's actually weird to have, so there's a fun fact. Because people, it's a predatory, a virus is not a good thing, right? And they usually have it on the websites for one reason, which is, you might not think about it. Oh, this is a cool, go check this out. No, cool, now my computer is hacked and my bank accounts are frozen and I have all these issues. That's great. But you have this situation where you can actually say, hey, come to my church. This is your passport. This can be your ticket to salvation. So I actually find this cute and clever, but not harmful. And if you want to be clever, at least be that, right? So there's my thought there.
Okay, and then the last one is this one that says one way.
I also kind of like this one. So, Mark doesn't have terrible taste. Shirt aside, right? I joke. I like the shirt. I like the shirt. All right. That's fine. No, this is great. First, it does the same thing as Why Did Jesus Die, which is, hey, cross, right? You're setting up what the point of this is. You're not trying to, make people say, what did I just get? And, no, okay, yeah, this is a Christian thing. And maybe I need to hear that right now. You open it up. It actually has some decent bold text, some decent stuff. It does have, it breaks down John 3:16. We've heard that before, but at least it gives you that connection there. And you actually do have some decent Bible verses, but they're not bombarded throughout this message. You actually, the Word of God, the Bible tells you that God knows all about you. He knows where you live. He knows your name. He even knows the thoughts and secrets of your heart. Hebrews 4:12, that's verses 12 to 13. So you have this situation where I didn't have to look at that and even know that's a Bible verse. It doesn't need to be. It's someone talking about God instead of coming, with the italics and the stuff. Because when you start italicizing words, that's generally a good way of saying, hey, gloss over me, right? And then when you do that for your whole little pamphlet, you have nothing left in the pamphlet. Yeah, a little long, I think, as well. I do think, let me see what I gave this one. This is one way. I gave it a 6 out of 10, but it's above the threshold. Like many of these are 5 or below. So I think there's only the 1 or 2 of them that I think are even a little bit better. So, there you go. Why do you like that one so much?
Thanks. The reason why I like this one is because if we go back here to what are the 3 essential parts of the gospel, all right? So he did a great job of analyzing these based on you know, from an outside perspective, would you even look at it? What are the things you look for, that sort of thing? For me, I'm analyzing it from a theological perspective. I'm saying, does this, first of all, is there anything in here that is wrong, that goes against the Bible? And then second of all, is there anything that is missing that needs to be there that's not there? And all of these other ones were missing one of these three things. They all had number 1 and 2, why must we be saved? They all talked about what's wrong with you and why you need to be saved. All right? How can Jesus save us? They all talked, well, I mean, I think all of them, maybe a couple of exceptions, but I think most of them talked about Jesus' death on the cross and how that can save you if you believe in that and you know, ask for forgiveness for your sins, that sort of thing. So they covered number 1 and 2 very well, all right? But none of those other tracks talked about, so what does it mean to be a Christian? Like if I'm convinced by your tract here and I decide I want to be a Christian, what am I getting myself into? What is that going to look like in my life? And the problem is all these other tracks stopped with the prayer. It's like, so you pray this prayer and now you're a Christian. And then they didn't tell you, so now what? Right? This is the one track that actually has a part at the end where it talks about after that, when you become a child of God, you're a new creature, old things are passed away, behold, all things are new, which that is a Bible verse, but again, it doesn't have to be, it's just starting to. You have new desires, you want to know more about Him, please Him, tell others about Him. You can know more about God by reading His Word. You can share the joys and problems with Him in prayer. You can grow and serve by joining with other believers in a local church. You can find someone and tell them about the Lord Jesus and how He gave you a clean heart. This is the way to become a strong Christian. Yes, there's only one way to be saved. And then it kind of repeats that. But it gives you a little bit of, so what's your life going to be like if you do this thing? If you become a Christian, you're going to want to know God more, so you're going to read your Bible. You're going to pray. You're going to join a local church somewhere and worship with other Christians. Like, you're going to share about how Jesus changed your life with other people. So it tells a little bit about the number 3 there, and none of the rest of them did. So that's why this one was my favorite.
And fair enough. I think what ends up happening often, it's difficult, especially, I think these need to be even shorter. And, you know, having that included in there. But ultimately, if you're using this as a tool or an aid to kind of help gin that conversation, you can talk about what, you know, how to be a Christian and how this happens. And it's not just go get baptized, right? Like, that's what most of these say, like, go get baptized today and go to our website. Like, no, like, it's a little bit more than like getting your head dunked in water, right? It's go affirm these beliefs and live this value in this world and you know, begin that journey. So.
Okay, so that's tracks. Now we're going to shift and we're going to do a little bit of street evangelism demonstration. So we're going to pretend he's just walking down the street and I'm just walking down the street and I'm going to briefly engage him in conversation. And I'm going to use, if you'll just kind of look this way.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
And then I'll have some typical ways that are used and then we'll get your feedback on that, okay? So, okay, all right. Hi.
Oh, hi.
My name's Mark, and I'm just out here talking to people today. So, if God asked you why He should let you into heaven, what would you say?
I would say that I tend to be a decent person. I take care of my family. I take care of my community. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now, obviously we would go on from there, but I'm just going to pause it right there to get a question for Andrew, and then I'm going to share something too. So first of all, for you, all right, how did that approach and that question make you feel?
I think it takes you off kilter to start with, and you can hear that in my voice. I even had to think about it, even though we've been talking about this. Because it hits you right directly as like, oh, are you a good person? It almost seems like, oh, well, why are you a good person? That's a hard thing.
So it made
to
you
hit.
feel defensive.
It can get you on the defense, right? Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Okay, all right. And you'll notice that his answer was, I'm a good person, right? Now, as a Christian, what am I going to do? Anybody?
Tell him that his goodness doesn't get him to heaven.
Exactly, I'm going to tell him he's wrong. right? And say, that doesn't get you into heaven.
Probably not good either.
Yeah,
that
okay.
goes well.
So my question made him feel defensive, and the most likely answer that he's going to give is
That's
going to
not good
lead to
enough.
an argument
Right,
of why his answer was wrong.
right.
And he probably, if he stopped to think about it, like again, he's kind of caught off guard, but if he stopped to think about it, he probably knows that, wait a minute, if I say this answer, it's probably the wrong answer. And I'm walking into a trap, right? And which is probably subconsciously why he was feeling defensive, because he kind of probably felt that coming, right? So this is a very common question to start a conversation with, but it creates an argument and it makes the other person feel defensive. So I don't think, now, if you've used this before and God used it in your life, praise God. God could use anything, right? Like, and so, if you've ever done that, I'm not trying to make you feel bad if you've given out a tract or if you've said some of these things, okay? God can use anything, but some things I think are better than others, right? Like he used Pharaoh, but we don't want to be Pharaoh, right? He used King Cyrus, but we don't want to be King Cyrus. Like we would rather be King David, or we would rather be someone who made it a little easier for God to use them, right? So okay, so we'll do this again here. All right, so walking down the studio. Hi, my name is Mark, and I'm just out here talking to people today. If you died tonight, where would you go?
Yeah, I'm just walking. I'm just leaving. Right? There's no response to say to that. That conversation's done. Right off the bat, right? It's like,
So you would be like, no, I'm not interested, and you would keep
where
walking.
just go. Right? That's what's happening there. Yeah.
Okay, so how did that make you feel?
Right. I mean, not just slightly defensive, but completely like, what? No. I'm trying to go to the grocery store right now. Like, that is, an immediate approach on something that's incredibly heavy. So that's how I would say, yeah, not just defensive, but like aggressively defensive.
Aggressively.
So
Now you're just out.
I'm ignoring him. I'm ignoring everyone else that is on the road for me, and I'm ignoring anyone who's wearing a cross or a Hawaiian shirt for the next day.
All right. Okay, so there you go. Trying again. Hey, my name's Mark. I'm just out here talking to people today. So, did you grow up with any particular spiritual or religious background?
Well, I'll lie in this case. No, I didn't really too much. I never really given that much thought.
Okay, all right. All right, so again, we'll pause. How did that question make you feel?
That's a neutral question. That's actually fairly beneficial. Now, you have to be careful with those, I would think, because which way would I answer, right? And
Sure.
that can have a lot of different pathways, but it doesn't immediately put me on the offensive. It isn't an assault on me. It's oh, hey, have you ever grown up with spirituality? Okay, that's an interesting question. And so I'm more eager to engage in a conversation with you, at least for a minute.
Yeah, I think that one, it feels more like the person who is approaching you is just like taking a poll, They're just like, I'm taking a survey, and did you have a religious background when you grew up? Like, it's not as aggressive. And the other thing is, he's definitely not gonna give a wrong answer. It's not gonna lead to an argument. It's not like he's gonna say, oh yeah, I grew up with religious background. I'm like, no, you didn't. Or, no, I didn't grow up with a religious background. Yes, you did. Like, I'm not gonna argue with him, right? Like, he grew up with whatever he grew up with. So his answer is guaranteed to be right. So there's a couple of benefits there, all right? There is one downside to it, and that is maybe he did grow up with a religious background and it was extremely painful,
Yeah.
There are people who, like the Catholic churches where the priest like abused a little kid, right? Well, what if it's that little kid who grew up and I'm meeting him on the street, and now I'm bringing up like trauma from his past, right?
Sure.
And so there is some danger to that, and that there could be some traumatic stuff there that could come out, and then you gotta figure out, what to do with that.
But that is some way you can actually approach, because the reality is that person can still be saved, at least in your guys' worldview.
Sure.
And that approach is, I'm so sorry to hear about that.
Sure.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable talking about it, I don't really feel comfortable because I'm a stranger, fair enough. But you might, on a good day, hey, I'm comfortable talking about that.
Sure.
And then explain, well, here at the Village Bible Church, we don't have such, this, that, and the other thing. And you might be able to bring back the good parts that were taken away from that evil. that
Sure.
happened.
Yeah, and if you are in a situation like that, or if you're ever talking to someone who has had a traumatic experience in the past in the church, I would suggest, number one, expressing sympathy and being like, hey, that's terrible that happened to you. You know, I feel bad that you had that experience. It is really sad that we live in a world where there are broken people, there are sinful people, and hurt people, and, you know, so express your sympathy there, and then also then talk about how that a religion, really should be judged based on whoever started that religion and what their book is. So like, if you're gonna judge Islam, look at Muhammad's life, and look at the Quran. Don't look at like your Muslim, like the Muslims who flew into the tower and blew up, you know, the World Trade Center, right? Like they were terrible examples of Muslims. And there are a lot of terrible examples of Muslims, but there are also good examples of Muslims. I lived in Indonesia for 3 years, and our neighbors were mostly Muslims, and none of them were flying planes into places. And, you know, now, they were still Muslim, they still didn't believe in the true God, but they weren't like militant,
The spark of humanity exists in all individuals.
sure, yes.
But they're still going to hell.
They still need Jesus, I agree, and that's part of why we were there in Indonesia, was to share Jesus with them. But I'm just saying that you should judge Islam based on Muhammad and the Quran, because that's who started it and that's their book. And if you do it based on that, Islam is still a terrible religion, because Muhammad was a messed up guy, and the Quran is a messed up book, all right? There's a lot of bad stuff in both his life and in that book. Versus if you look at Jesus' life, and you look at the Bible, now, a non-Christian's gonna make an argument that there's bad stuff in the Bible, but I don't know of anybody who makes an argument that Jesus has messed up stuff in his life. I don't know, maybe you would make that argument, but.
I would actually make the argument that the creator of the Christian church was not Jesus. That was the disciple. The creator would be Paul Saul, right?
Well, I would disagree, but let's
That's
not
fine.
get, let's not get
That's
into
fine. That's a
that.
different argument.
But the point is that express sympathy for what happened to them, and then maybe try to change the conversation to focus on Jesus and on the Bible, because that is really what I would say where Christianity comes from. So, but anyway, but a little bit better question. All right, we got just a couple more here. So, we'll just skip the
Yeah.
introduction. How about this question? How does this make you feel? What is your perception of Christians or the church?
That's a great question. I'm fairly negative towards them. I think they've caused a lot of harm. They're all over my friend's Facebook page calling them terrible people and to go kill themselves. So yeah, I've heard that plenty of time. So yeah, I'm not too into the whole idea.
Okay. And how did that question make you feel?
It sets you off a little bit, but it doesn't make you defensive because you're asking about a perspective. And it also means you might mute your words a little bit, because if someone's going to ask me that, it's probably assumed that, you know, the Hawaiian churchgoer is in fact a believer, right? And that's fine. So that it doesn't make me feel too negative, but it does start in a likely not a great view.
Yeah, I feel that it's kind of the same way about this one, and that it is a neutral question, like whatever he answered, that is his perception, so he's not gonna get it wrong, I'm not gonna argue with him about whether it's his perception or not. But if it is negative, it does kind of start the conversation off on a negative note. Okay? How about the question, who do you think Jesus is?
I think Jesus was a guy who lived in Palestine, and he taught some good stuff, but he then created a whole religion.
Okay, all right, how does that question make you feel?
Question is neutral on its face. It's open to an incredible amount of interpretations. It's slightly positive in that it doesn't have it's probably fairly hard, as you correctly pointed out, for me to be like, oh yeah, Jesus, that guy, oof,
What a
he
jerk.
was a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? No, like that's not the case. It's pretty well nowhere in the literature. So I think that's fine of a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like this one, it's neutral, it doesn't start off negative, and it just starts a conversation, and they can share whoever they think Jesus was, and then you can share who Jesus is to you. And it's not really an argument, it's just, what do you think? Okay, great, and what do I think? Great, and you can learn from each other there, all right? Another one, this is actually the one that I usually use when I'm, doing evangelism at Tenure Creek or wherever. I'm out here asking people, oh, actually, no, I used to use this one, I forgot, I changed to the next question, but I use this one for a long, and sometimes I still use this. I'm out here asking people what they think about God, what do you think?
I'm relatively indifferent to the question. I don't know whether God exists, but I try to live my life in a way that is a net positive on the world.
Okay, all right, and how does that question make you feel?
That's a great question. That's a good pick there because, again, there is no right or wrong answer, but it also just says, it opens you up to a friendly conversation. Now we're just talking about it. I don't even have to hear, you don't even have to have the cross on and be the Christian. I don't need that. We could just be two people just doing the thing. What do you think? What do you think about God? And that can be non-biased, at least at the front, which allows you to have a more interesting conversation that then can bring in why, your God in particular, and your, view on God, it might be the right way and the path forward. So I like that one.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, yeah. I also like it because it kind of gets you right to where that person is in their walk with God, because some people are very far away from God, some people are kind of in the middle, some people are really close, right? And are like ready to believe. And you never know where a person is at, but if you ask them, what do they think about God, then they'll just tell you where they are on that spectrum, and then you know kind of what to talk to them about, right? So it helps you know kind of where to start the conversation. And then the last one that we'll do for today is, if there was one question you could ask God, what would it be?
Why does evil exist?
Okay, yeah, all right. How does that question make you feel?
That question is a great question. I would imagine that's probably the most terrifying thing if you've never done evangelism before to ask, because I cannot, you're not gonna have a lot of answers. You're gonna have some answers, but you're not gonna have, you will always feel like you won't have enough answers because that question is so open-ended, on things that, and I'm sure it falls into a couple camps, but why does evil exist? Why does this person get hurt? Why does he hate this? Why does, whatever, and you might have some answers for it, but it's very open-ended. You could immediately go back to that trauma thing. Why did my pastor do such and such to me? Right? That's, now you're opening up a different can, right? And so that can be very difficult, but it is, if you feel confident in your abilities to speak with God or with God, have God speak through you, let's say it that way, then you would, hopefully, that's probably the most effective question. Let's put it that way.
I'm glad you think so. That's the one that I use now. Yep, I know, time's up here for this week, but yeah, I like to start with that. It's again, a neutral question. They can't answer it wrong, and I'm not gonna argue with them. And it also goes straight to the heart of what is it with their relationship with God, what are they thinking about right now? What is it that they're wondering about? And he's right that it could go a lot of different directions. But the Bible says that we should not be afraid of not having anything to say when people ask us, right? That the Holy Spirit will give us the words to say, and we'll talk more next week about more details of that. But again, to overcoming that fear that we talked about earlier. But this, it really gets to the heart of where is that person right now, and it gives you the chance to help them. Like they have a question, they want an answer. And hopefully God will help you to give them that answer, and it will be meaningful for them. And so then, instead of giving them false hope of $1 million bill or whatever, you're giving them real hope of an answer to a question that has been heavy on their heart. So, all right, well, thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate
Thank
all
you
this
all.
feedback that you gave us.
I won't be able to be here next week, unfortunately, so Mark will give his excellent opinions and talks next week, but you've all been wonderful. Thank you, and if we ever in the future have something come up and we want to chat more in front of an audience, I like talking if it wasn't obvious. So thank you all.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good week.